Imagine for a second that you're being followed. Not just, casually watched,
Yeah.
but hunted.
Okay.
Every single step you take, every time you grab lunch, every conversation with your friends, it's all being recorded by a team of legal experts. And they're looking for just one thing.
A slip-up.
Exactly. A mistake that gives them the grounds to, terminate you.
That sounds like a spy thriller. Or, some kind of intense corporate espionage movie.
It does, doesn't it? But that's pretty much the setup for the text we're diving into today,
Yeah.
Matthew chapter 12. This is not just a collection of nice religious stories. It's a high-stakes surveillance operation. We're talking sting operations, legal traps, accusations of treason, the works.
It's really the turning point in Matthew's entire narrative. Before this chapter, you see the religious leaders, and they're skeptical of Jesus. They have questions. They're wary.
Right.
By the end of this chapter, that skepticism hardens into a concrete conspiracy to commit murder.
So that's our mission for this deep dive. We want to unpack that escalation. We're going to break down 3 specific, really high-intensity confrontations from the text. First, a legal battle over Sabbath laws. Then a trap that gets set inside a synagogue. And finally, this massive, just heavy accusation involving demonic power.
And to really get what's happening, you have to look beyond just the words on the page. We're going to need to pull in some history on Pharisaic law, a little bit of archaeology to help us, visualize the room where this all goes down.
Oh, that's interesting.
And of course, the Old Testament precedents that Jesus himself uses to build his defense.
Okay, so let's set the first scene. It's the Sabbath. Jesus and his disciples, they're walking through the grain fields. They're hungry, so they just snap off some heads of grain and start eating.
Seems harmless enough.
To us,
Yeah.
just a snack. But to the Pharisees who are, watching from the bushes, this is basically a crime scene.
Right. And you have to understand the why of it. It wasn't about theft. The law of Moses actually allowed travelers to pick a little grain from the edge of a field to eat. The issue was when.
Because it's the Sabbath.
Exactly. In the oral tradition of the time, the Mishnah, there were 39 categories of work that were forbidden on the Sabbath. And harvesting and threshing were on that list.
So by plucking the grain, the Pharisees are arguing they were, harvesting?
Harvesting, and then by rubbing it in their hands to get the husk off, that was considered threshing.
Wow, that seems like splitting hairs.
It does to us, but for them, these definitions were like a protective fence around God's law. And if you break the fence, you endanger the whole nation. So they accuse the disciples of breaking the law.
And this is where I just love watching Jesus operate. He doesn't apologize. He doesn't say, oh, sorry, our mistake. He counters with case law. He basically acts like a defense attorney.
He goes straight to legal precedent. He brings up 1 Samuel 21, the story of King David. David and his men, they're on the run from King Saul, they're starving, and they go into the tabernacle and eat the bread of the presence.
Which, for anyone who doesn't know the Levitical law, was a huge deal. That was bread offered to God. By law, only the priests could eat it. It was holy.
Precisely. So you see the logic Jesus is building here. David, God's anointed king, technically broke a ritual law to save his men's lives, and Scripture never condemns him for it.
So he's setting up a hierarchy of values.
Yes, he's arguing that things like mercy and preserving life, they rank higher than ritual technicalities.
But he doesn't stop there. He's got a second precedent, right? The priests.
Yeah, and this is almost like a reductio ad absurdum argument. He says, look, who works the hardest on the Sabbath? It's the priests in the temple. I mean, they're butchering animals, lifting wood, keeping fires going. That is hard physical work.
Yeah.
But they're considered innocent
And why are they innocent?
because they're serving the temple. The work is authorized by the location, by the purpose, and then Jesus drops the hammer. He says, one greater than the temple is here.
That is just a massive claim. So if the priests are exempt because they serve the building where God's presence dwells.
Then the disciples are exempt because they serve the person where God's presence dwells.
Wow.
It's the whole thesis statement of the chapter. And he caps it off by saying, the Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath.
Let's just pause on that for a second. Lord of the Sabbath. That isn't just a claim to be a great teacher. That's a claim to be the author of the law, isn't it?
It is. He's essentially saying, I wrote the rules, so I get to say what they're for. And then he tells them what they're for. He quotes Hosea, I desire mercy, not sacrifice.
So that's round one in the grain field. The Pharisees lose on logic, but they are not done. The scene shifts, and now we're in the synagogue. And this feels less like a random encounter and more like a setup.
Oh, it's absolutely a trap. Matthew tells us there's a man there with a withered hand, probably some kind of paralysis or atrophy, and the Pharisees ask Jesus point blank, is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath.
And you just know they're not asking out of some deep curiosity about medical ethics.
No, they want grounds for a lawsuit. If he says yes, he's advocating for work on the Sabbath. If he says no, he looks cruel and heartless. It's a catch-22.
Okay, so help us visualize this. You mentioned archaeology. What did a first-century synagogue, like the one they found in Magdala, actually look like?
Well, you have to get rid of the idea of a modern church with pews all facing forward. These early synagogues had stone benches built right into the walls, lining the room. It was an arena, everyone faced the center.
So when Jesus calls this man forward,
He's putting him right in the middle of the circle with every single eye in the room just fixed on him.
the tension must have been just suffocating.
Yep.
And Jesus answers their legal question with another question about sheep.
It's a brilliant move. He pivots to their own economic self-interest. He asks them, if one of you has a sheep and it falls into a pit on the Sabbath, won't you lift it out?
And of course, the answer from everyone in the room is, well, yeah, of course.
Of course they would. A sheep is an asset. It's money. You don't let your investment die just because it's Saturday. So Jesus corners them. He says, how much more valuable is a man than a sheep?
Oof, that's a stinging critique.
Yeah.
He's exposing their hypocrisy, that their so-called piety has a financial loophole for their own property.
Exactly.
But they won't allow a humanitarian loophole to heal a suffering person.
Precisely. He concludes it's lawful to do good on the Sabbath. Then he just turns to the man, tells him to stretch out his hand, and it's completely restored instantly.
You would think that seeing a withered limb, inflate with muscle and life right before your eyes would cause a little bit of awe, maybe a pause for reflection. But verse 14 says the Pharisees went out and plotted to kill him.
And that's the danger, isn't it? When a religious system values the code more than the person. When the code is threatened, they feel justified in destroying the threat, even if that threat is literally bringing life and healing. This is the moment the opposition turns lethal.
So Jesus knows about this murder plot, and he withdraws. And this is where Matthew inserts a quote from Isaiah 42 describing Jesus as this gentle servant. And there's a line there I really want to focus on. A bruised reed he will not break, and a smoldering wick he will not extinguish. What is that imagery getting at?
It's beautiful, but it's also very specific. A bruised reed, that would be one of those hollow river reeds they used for flutes or measuring rods. Once it gets bent or cracked, it's useless. You can't fix it. You just snap it and throw it away.
Okay. And a smoldering wick.
That's a flax wick in an old clay oil lamp that's run out of fuel. It's just
Yeah.
smoking, giving off a bad smell, no light. The normal reaction is to just snuff it out, pinch it.
Those are metaphors for people who are broken,
Yeah.
used up.
Yes. People who society, and certainly the Roman and religious elite of that day, would just snap off and snuff out. The useless people, the weak ones. But this prophecy says Jesus is different. He handles the damaged and the dying with this immense care. He doesn't crush the weak to build his kingdom.
Which is such an incredible irony, because at this exact moment, the Pharisees are plotting to crush him.
The contrast is it's stark. They're plotting murder while he's healing the sick. They're loud and aggressive, and he's withdrawing to avoid a premature conflict.
But we shouldn't mistake that gentleness for weakness, because right after this, we get the house-divided conflict, and Jesus pulls no punches.
This is the heavy artillery for sure. Jesus heals a man in a terrible state, demon-possessed, blind, and mute. The crowd is amazed, and they start whispering, could this be the Son of David? Which is a messianic title.
And the Pharisees panic.
They panic. They can't deny the miracle happened, so they have to spin the source of the power.
And they say, he drives out demons by Beelzebul, the prince of demons. Basically, he's a sorcerer working for the devil.
It's a desperate, illogical slander, and Jesus just dismantles it with pure logic. First, the house-divided idea. If Satan is empowering Jesus to cast out Satan's own demons, then Satan is fighting a civil war against himself. His kingdom would collapse.
It makes zero strategic sense for the devil to liberate people from the devil.
None. Second, he kind of turns it on them. He asks, if I drive out demons by Beelzebul, by whom do your people drive them out?
Oh, interesting.
And third, he gives this strongman analogy. This one always stands out. He says you can't just walk into a strongman's house and steal his stuff unless you first tie up the strongman.
So it's like a heist, a rescue mission. Satan is the strongman.
Right. And the house is the world, and the possessions are the people he holds captive. Jesus is saying, I'm not working for the strongman. I'm the one who broke into his house, tied him up, and now I'm plundering his goods. I'm rescuing the hostages.
That paints Jesus as a warrior, not just a gentle teacher. But this whole conversation leads to this warning that has frankly terrified people for 2,000 years. The unpardonable sin. Blasphemy against the Spirit.
We need to be really careful and clear here because this causes so much anxiety. Jesus is not talking about saying a cursed word by accident or having a moment of doubt or even a crisis of faith. You have to look at the context.
And the context is the Pharisees witnessing a miracle and attributing it to Satan.
Exactly. They are staring at a clear, undeniable, compassionate work of the Holy Spirit, a man being liberated from darkness, healed, restored, and they are looking that pure goodness in the face and calling it evil.
So it's not an accidental slip of the tongue. It's a deliberate, hardened moral inversion.
That's a perfect way to put it. If you look at the manifest Spirit of God and you willfully call it the devil, you have sawed off the very branch you're sitting on. You're rejecting the only power that can possibly convict you or save you. It's unpardonable, not because God runs out of forgiveness, but because the person has locked the door from the inside and thrown away the key.
That's a chilling but clarifying distinction. It's about the settled posture of the heart, which is why he calls them a brood of vipers and says a tree is known by its fruit.
He's saying their words, this accusation, it's just the fruit. It's revealing the rot that's already deep inside them.
Okay, so the tension is now at an all-time high. And then, incredibly, some of the scribes and Pharisees say, "Teacher, we want to see a sign from you," which just seems audacious. He just healed a blind and mute man right in front of them.
It really captures their arrogance, doesn't it? They don't want evidence. They want a performance. They want a cosmic magic trick on their terms to prove who he is.
And Jesus just refuses. He calls them a wicked and adulterous generation.
And adulterous there means unfaithful to God, to their covenant. He says they will get no sign except one, the sign of Jonah.
And this is pure typology. Jonah was in the belly of the great fish for 3 days and 3 nights.
And the Son of Man will be in the heart of the earth for 3 days and 3 nights. He is staking his entire claim, his entire credibility on his resurrection. He's saying, you want your sign, wait for the empty tomb.
He then compares them unfavorably to the people of Nineveh and the Queen of Sheba.
Right. Nineveh was this violent pagan city, but they repented when Jonah preached. The Queen of Sheba traveled halfway across the known world just to hear Solomon's wisdom. And Jesus is essentially saying, someone greater than Jonah and greater than Solomon is standing right here, and you, the religious experts, are rejecting him.
This led into a really strange little parable, the one about the empty house. An unclean spirit leaves the man, comes back, finds the house swept clean and put in order, and then moves back in with 7 even worse spirits. Is he saying self-improvement is dangerous?
He's saying it's insufficient. Think about the Pharisees. They were obsessed with sweeping the house, cleaning up the outside, following all the rules, removing the dirt of ceremonial uncleanness. But the problem was, the house was empty.
Empty of what?
Empty of the indwelling presence of God. You see, nature abhors a vacuum. If you just get rid of your bad habits, the demons, so to speak, but you don't fill that empty space with the Holy Spirit, you're just tidying up the place for a worse collapse later.
So moral reformation, just trying to be a good person on your own strength, isn't enough. You're either filled with the Spirit or you're vulnerable.
Exactly. You can't be neutrally good.
The chapter then ends on this very personal note. Jesus' mother and his brothers show up, and they're outside asking to speak to him. Now, in that culture, family is everything. You don't just ignore your mom.
No, absolutely not. Family obligation was the central social structure. If your family calls, you answer. But Jesus uses this interruption to redefine reality.
He points to his disciples, and he says, "Here are my mother and my brothers. For whoever does the will of my Father in heaven is my brother and sister and mother."
It can sound a little harsh to our ears, but he isn't disowning his biological family. He's expanding the definition of family. He's establishing that spiritual kinship. The bond you form by doing God's will together is actually a deeper reality than blood ties.
It almost ties back to the empty house, doesn't it? The people in his true family aren't just the ones who swept the house of bad behavior.
They're the ones who are actively doing the will of the Father. It's about active alignment with God, not just your heritage or your religious ID card.
So if we step back and look at the arc of this whole deep dive, we started with a technical debate about Sabbath rules in a grain field. We moved to a murder plot in a synagogue. We saw the strong man being bound, the promise of the resurrection, and we end with a complete redefinition of the human family.
It's a masterclass in confrontation. Jesus systematically takes apart the religious structures of his day. He claims to be greater than the temple, greater than Jonah, greater than Solomon, and the Lord of the Sabbath itself.
And that really is the challenge that lingers for you, the listener. These aren't just quaint stories or moral fables. These are claims of absolute authority.
Right, and if the sign of Jonah is true, if he really did walk out of that tomb 3 days later, then those other claims aren't just claims, they're facts. And if he is Lord, he has the right to determine how we live.
And maybe for anyone listening who feels like a bruised reed today, feeling broken or unworthy, that authority isn't something to fear. It's the authority of a gentle servant who binds the strong man to set you free.
You just have to make sure you don't leave the house empty. It's an invitation to be filled.
That is a provocative thought to end on. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us into Matthew 12. We'll catch you on the next one.